This is the Mop Up, and we're about to be joined by Howie Klein, who is going to be talking about Maxwell Frost as well as George Santos. We have some new information about Congressman George Santos. Who's the bigger fraud, Maxwell Frost or George Santos? And if we have time, we'll get to Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene having a split. And then Governor Kathy Hochul of New York is also a fraud. Joining us from Los Angeles is Howie Klein. He is the founder and the treasurer of the Blue America PAC. He also writes Down With Tyranny. Everybody should read him over at Down With Tyranny. Welcome, Howie Klein. It's good to hear your voice.
Great. Nice to be with you. And if people are wondering, what does some guy in Los Angeles know about New York to talk about George Santos and Kathy Hochul? I was born and raised in New York. I grew up in Nassau County, which is more than George Santos did, who is probably not even an American citizen. He claims he was born in Queens, but people who know him say that he's told them that he was born in Brazil.
Let's start at the beginning. George Santos is a newly elected Republican governor from New York State.
Congressman.
I'm sorry, congressman. And he claims to have been Jewish, gay.
So he claims a lot of things.
What does he claim? What does he claim?
He claims so many things. The one that really made me hysterical today, I was laughing so much. So he made up this whole story about being Jewish. He wasn't Jewish. It really was an intense story about his ancestors, not his ancestors, his grandparents coming over to flee the Nazis. It was like a long, convoluted story about his Jewishness. And in Brazil, there are a lot of Jews who have fled from oppression, starting, by the way, in the late 1400s, where they were fleeing from the Inquisition.
Right.
But his so-called Jewish family came from fled from the Nazis. Well, that was interesting to me, but it turns out now he talked to he's been exposed by the New York Times, and he refused to speak with them, but he went to the New York Post, and he told them, I never said I was Jewish. I said I was Jew-ish. Like, someone who's fat might say, I'm not fat, I'm fat-ish. And he claims Jewish, just said he was Jew-ish. Now, I know this is insane, but this is what he really said to them. And the New York Post printed it with a straight face. I'm sure they were hysterical laughing, but they printed it today.
It's an exclusive interview they have with him. So he claims to be... But
there's so much more that he lied about. He lied about going to college. He never did.
He didn't go to
lied
Baruch.
About working blue chip... two colleges. Baruch, he said he graduated from Baruch, but he went to NYU. Both NYU and Baruch said he never heard of him. He never went to either school. He claimed he worked for two blue chip Wall Street firms, Citigroup and what was the other one? Was it Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs? Goldman Sachs, not Morgan Stanley. He said he worked for, and he never. They also said they never heard of him. He never worked for them. Now he says, well, he was running this other firm, and he sometimes advised people to go to Goldman Sachs or Citigroup. Something insane like that. The fact of the matter is that the SEC says his firm was a Ponzi scheme. So, this guy is such a mess. There's nothing he told the truth about. He also said he hadn't been in the closet at a time when he was married to a woman, and he was in the closet. Supposedly he is gay, and he says he's happily married to a man now. But, is there any way to trust anything this guy says?
Yes. He's a Republican. That
yes,
I believe.
You can, yes.
He's definitely a Republican. Okay. So.
And a MAGA Republican, by the way, he claims. I don't know if I believe he is, but he claims he's a MAGA Republican.
What happens to him? He rises up?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Absolutely nothing is going to happen to him unless they can find that there's a birth certificate in Brazil, and then maybe there's something that can happen to him. He's being investigated by the Attorney General of New York now. I think if he claimed he was a citizen, which he has claimed, and it turns out he wasn't a citizen, then we're looking at some kind of possibility where they can take some kind of action to have another election. I'm not certain about that. But the fact that he lied about all these things, they can't do anything about it. The Republicans they could force him out, right, but they won't, because their margin to control the House is too small, and they couldn't afford to lose him.
Whose seat did he take?
Tom Suozzi. So, I mean, it's not exactly the same district, but it's about 80% the same district. So it's New York 3, which is it's kind of thought of as the North Shore district. So a little bit of Queens and mostly Nassau County, the North Shore. But it was going east into Suffolk, and they got rid of that, and they made it go south more into Nassau. So it doesn't quite go to the
Suozzi ran for governor. Is he a Democrat?
Suozzi he's a conservative Democrat, a New Dem. He happens to be a friend of mine as well. So I know him better than I know a lot of these guys. And he's for a New Dem, he's a pretty good guy.
Okay.
He means well.
All right. So we want to talk. You've been writing extensively about Sam Bankman-Fried. You say there may be $100 million that he and his family have donated to Washington, D.C. politicians, including my favorite, he's to the left of me right now, Maxwell Frost. He's the voice of a new generation. Maxwell Frost from Orlando. He was just elected to Congress. He's young. He's dynamic. He's a Democrat. He's going to speak for our kids. What's wrong with
Well, he started the first thing he did was lie, saying he was the first Gen Z elected to Congress. If you think of who the worst members of Congress were in the 117th Congress, certainly the first Gen Z congressman comes right to mind, Madison Cawthorn.
Right.
So I don't know, but it doesn't sound that good to say I was the second Gen Z right. congressman. So he lied and said he was the first Gen Z congressman. But that was only one of many, many lies. He's kind of like the George Santos of the Democratic Party. He's just a big old liar about one thing after the other, including some serious stuff. Like, for example, he claimed he didn't know anything about the $1 million that Sam Bankman-Fried and his brother Gabe Bankman-Fried spent on his campaign. That isn't true. He auditioned for that money, and the way he auditioned was by starting, and this is an Uber driver who's running for Congress, but he started a cyber currency advisory committee with a bunch of Sam Bankman-Fried cronies on it. And that's how he auditioned for the $1 million that they spent, which is why he was elected to Congress, because of that $1 million.
Okay.
I spoke with someone today who worked with him when he was at he worked for some anti-gun organization. And I spoke with someone who worked with him there who told me that, he doesn't believe in anything except himself, that he would sell out everything and anything at any time. And you run into congressmen like that now and then. It's a horror when you do, but he's one of them. Tulsi Gabbard is another one. Kirsten Sinema is another one. You do run into these kind of characters, and certainly Frost is one. Frost called me twice, and we had very long phone calls when he was first running. And I listened to him, let him talk. I asked him one or two questions, got him going, and I listened to him, and my jaw just dropped. I felt like I was listening. I speak with a lot of members of Congress and a lot of candidates. I don't remember ever speaking to someone who was so more transparently lying than this guy Frost. Just horrible, absolutely horrible. And he won, I don't know, I can't remember exactly. I think he had 35% of the vote in a very crowded primary and in a very Democratic district. So once you win the primary, it doesn't matter because you're then the candidate, right. Which is a shame. Awful. Absolutely awful. I have a very, very long piece about him on my blog. I think I don't know if I put it up this morning or yesterday, but it's up towards the top.
Yeah. Read it.
And
over.
It was, it's a lot of it is based on the really great research done by Ryan Grimm. But he did that research in September, and he published his piece in October, and I tried to bring it a little bit up to date because since then a lot has happened, to show a lot of the things that Ryan was predicting came true, like how crooked Frost is.
Right. Okay. So Maxwell Frost, can't believe in him. Let's turn to your piece over Down With Tyranny about Sam Bankman-Fried and how deep his tentacles reached. You're saying it's close to 100 million.
Let's start with some pipsqueak congressman from Orlando. Let's start with Joe Biden, $5 million.
$5 million to Joe Biden.
He was the second individual donor to Biden's campaign. I haven't heard that Biden's giving that money back. Have you?
No.
I follow that very closely. Who's returning the money and who's not returning the money? That isn't money being returned.
You write Schumer returned $3 million.
Yeah, Schumer's PAC returned a great deal of money. Pelosi's PAC, which got $6 million, said that they was waiting for the feds to tell them where to put the money and they'll get rid of it. The Republicans are making sounds like they're giving the money back, but they haven't. So he gave, I think, $2,750,000 to McCarthy's PAC and $2.5 million to McConnell's PAC, and they both kind of said that they're taking a wait and see approach, but that they'll return it. But I don't believe them. We'll see. Believe me, I'll follow that very closely.
And what was he?
Basically what's being returned are the $2,900 contributions to individuals. Everyone is sending that back because who cares? But what about the $1 million he gave here and the $1 million he gave there? Those to candidates, like Frost. He spent $1 million on almost $1 million on Frost's campaign, and Frost said, "I don't know anything about it. What do I know about that? I'm not giving that back."
What did he get in return for $100 million?
Good question. That is the question that the media is refusing to ask. Now, let's go to a group that calls themselves the Blockchain 8. 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans. He gave them lots of money. And what did they do? They wrote a letter to the SEC saying, we don't want you interfering with this wonderful industry, and leave them alone. And they really, put the squeeze on Gary Gensler, the head of the SEC, in a very big way. So there's a perfect example. I'm hoping these 8 members go to jail. They took a bribe and they did something for the bribe right away. But in a more general sense, he gave hundreds of thousands of dollars to the members of the House Financial Services Committee. And they did what he wanted, which is to make sure that he didn't get regulated. The FTX, his company, didn't get regulated, and more. I mean, Bankman-Fried's mother, who's gone off just like him, had her own anti-progressive PAC called Mind the Gap PAC, and in fact, he gave her $1 million. Although the money that $1 million and other money that the PAC raised just went for salaries and expenses for the people who ran it. What they were able to do was to get their members to donate in a concerted way towards the candidates that they would point to. So one of them is a member of the House Financial Services Committee named Sean Casten from Chicagoland, and he's a lifelong crook. He's from New York. He and his father were crooks in New York. They were driven out of New York, went to Chicago, where they're crooks there. And he's a member of Congress, a member of the House Financial Services Committee. Bankman-Fried's mother, directed $500,000 towards him, and what does he do? He hires Bankman-Fried's brother, Gabe Bankman-Fried, to be on his staff in Congress in a very minor job, just opening letters, basically. That was his job. Open the letters, answer them if there's nothing important that anyone else has to deal with. But suddenly, every time there's a House Financial Services Committee meeting that has to do with cryptocurrency in any way, suddenly he's there. Now, these are very high-level meetings. Maybe a chief of staff will go, rarely, and maybe. But like a letter opener? Never. So you're saying, and he spoke. You're saying, what did Bankman-Fried get for the $100 million? That's the kind of thing he got. He also just got out of jail free, which is another thing.
How is
the
it
papers
that it's
reported
possible? Explain
$1
this to
billion.
me.
Then there was no $250 million bond. The judge, who right after she did
Excuse
this,
me
by the
for
way,
one
she
second.
recused
Howie, I stepped over you. He's out on a $250 million bond, even though he claims he's broke.
He's not out on a 200. No, he's not. It was a lie, and it was like the media not paying good attention.
Right.
And when that got reported,
what
they
is
wanted it. What the story really is he's basically out on his own recognizance with his parents' $4 million home as the collateral for a bond. The judge who gave him that sweet deal recused herself right after she gave him the deal. So she gave him the deal, and then she said, "Well, I shouldn't really be on this case because my husband's firm worked for FTX, Bankman's company." And then she didn't recuse herself before she let him out of jail free. She recused herself after. So he can just take off. Supposedly he's got $8 billion stashed with Kim Jong-un in Korea. I don't know what that really means, but he was definitely laundering meth money for North Korea. So he has business over there, and that's illegal. And there's, no one even knows how much money is really missing. It goes from the minimum of $8 billion to the highest figure I've heard was $32 billion. So, but who knows? Who knows how much money is missing? We'll know eventually, but we don't know now. It changes all the time. It's the same way that the amount of money that he's given to members of Congress changes all the time. I mean, suddenly you find out, oh, that PAC over there, he gave them money, and then they gave it to this congressman or that congressman. And it's not just him, by the way. His cronies at FTX, very, very, also gave huge amounts of money. One of them being a guy named Ryan Salami.
Right.
And Ryan Salami was the guy who was bribing the Republicans. It was the same pot of money.
I have a picture of him up right now. I have a picture of Salami and his girlfriend who ran. She ran for Congress in New York with, this picture is with Don Jr. and Kimberly Gargoyle. So, who was Salami?
Salami was one of the principals at FTX. His job was to bribe the Republicans, which he did with millions and millions of dollars. I mean, supposedly $24 million, but even Bankman-Fried says that it was much more than that. So, like I said, where it's very, very hard to trace this money. Sometimes I spend hours tracing money, and I'm finding, someone gives money to some innocuous sounding group, whether it's about pandemics or it's about women's rights or various organizations, and that's the way they launder money into these campaigns. Santos, for example, wanted to help his girlfriend. I don't know if they're married now, but I think she was his fiance at the time, to run for Lee Zeldin's seat out in Suffolk County, east of Santos, by the way. Now she lost. But after spending more money than anybody else,
not
his
Santos,
money,
Salami.
the way he money, very innocuously.
Salami was, you said Santos. Salami's girlfriend was running for.
Salami's girlfriend, right? Santos' boyfriend,
right. So Salami was running his girlfriend for Lee Zeldin's seat, and he was running for governor against Hochul, right?
Right, and he did fairly well. And a lot of people are wondering, as a matter of fact, how can a MAGA Republican like Lee Zeldin, who's just worthless and has a record of worthlessness in Congress, how can he do so well in blue New York? And at that point, why don't we cue that tape that you made?
I will in 1 second. I just want to ask you one. It's a great question. Lee Zeldin almost beat Kathy Hochul, who is the new governor of New York. She filled in for Andrew Cuomo after the sexual assaults, and he had to step down, and she was reelected. She gets sworn in, I think, in like a week. But before we get to that...
Barely reelected.
I'm sorry?
Barely reelected.
Barely reelected.
I mean, the thing is, she had never been elected at all. She was picked by that crooked governor to be his lieutenant governor. So it's, they run on the same ticket, and then when he was driven out of office, she became governor. It's not like people picked her to be governor. So she just was elected. She had had lots of offices before that, various offices in New York, and in fact she was even a congresswoman at one time. Right. So
before we play that, I have one quick question about Sam Bankman-Fried and Salami and the $100 million of crypto money. From what I read over Down With Tyranny, cryptocurrency is what, as you just said, drug dealers and mobsters use to avoid the law.
And terrorists.
And terrorists. So when Sam Bankman-Fried is giving $100 million, is that $100 million of his, or is that laundered money that's being delivered to the Democrats and the Republicans through cryptocurrency? Not necessarily his, but impossible to trace.
Right. That's exactly right.
That's what you say it is or think it is?
Well, it's what I say it is, and I say it is because I think it is, and I'm following pretty good sources who have been involved with it, and that's what they're saying, and that's why I'm not making it up if that's what you're asking me.
So just so we're clear, just so I understand this, I'm just repeating what you said because it's fascinating. You're saying Bankman-Fried was a conduit of nefarious money under the guise of, I'm a cryptocurrency billionaire and this is my money. You're suggesting that it wasn't his money, it was money.
But where did he get? He didn't. I mean, that's how he got the money.
And it's dirty.
He got the money from laundering money for drug dealers and terrorists and Iran and South Korea, and that's where the money comes from.
But do we know if that money had a message attached to it? Did somebody like Schumer? He takes $3 million. Does he think he's taking it for cryptocurrency kingpins, or does he know that this is dirty money and there's a message attached to it?
My guess is that Schumer didn't know. My guess is they don't want to look too closely at where money like this comes from. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think any politician would take this kind of money if they knew it was coming from drug dealers and terrorists. I don't think that would happen.
Then why give it to politicians? If you're a drug dealer or if you're a foreign leader,
coming from. No. It was coming from Sam Bankman-Fried. The drug dealers didn't have any idea. I think the drug dealers and the terrorists and all of them are going to try to kill him now. Right. That's what I think. He stole their money.
Right. How many cryptocurrency kings are dead now? 3?
Well, 3 that we know of. 3 crypto billionaires who had some business with Bankman-Fried have been murdered or have been found dead. These are young, healthy guys who were found dead in the last month and a half.
Okay, so let's go back to Kathy Hochul. She is the governor of New York, and she, as you write over Down With Tyranny, she barely beat Lee Zeldin. In New York, that was unusual, right? You expect.
And New York is a very big state. Republicans don't win statewide offices there anymore.
Right. So we're going to play an expose, an ad that's running on Down With Tyranny. Who made this?
This was made by a great guy. I can't remember his first name. His last name is Wu, W-U. He ran against her at one time for in a primary, and he made this ad as part of that run. It's
kind of shocking because she's a Democrat. And you think, well, if you're not paying too much attention to her, and then we'll talk about her Supreme Court pick after this, which is
all right.
Okay.
And I've heard from a lot of Republicans. They think I'm a different kind of Democrat, and I'll take that as a compliment.
I don't think that many people know that I've always had the Conservative Party endorsement every time I've run for office.
I did not support Obamacare 100%. Of course, I voted many times to repeal it. So you just need to look at my record.
I led the fight against giving illegal immigrants driver's licenses.
I voted with Speaker Boehner against the president's policy on Libya. I'm one of 20 Democrats in the entire country who supported the energy bill.
I support the Keystone Pipeline, unlike the president and his administration.
I'm one of the few Democrats to receive the NRA endorsement. I've become very conservative in my voting record.
I've talked to hundreds of people, many, many conservatives and Republicans, and they are with me on the issues.
All right. So
what do you think? Anything would have happened in New York if they had heard this? If New York voters had heard this before the election?
I wouldn't have voted for her.
Exactly.
So
I mean, that's her speaking record. That's her voice talking about her own record in various jobs that she had, including as a member of Congress, where she was one of the most conservative Democrats in Congress.
So you write about Mondaire Jones, Congressman Mondaire Jones. He has a tweet up that attacks our Democratic governor for appointing Hector LaSalle to the Supreme Court. Who is Hector LaSalle?
He's a justice on the I think it's the appeals court right now, and she just appointed him to not just be a justice of the Supreme Court, but to be the head justice of the Supreme Court, which is not only does he sit on the Supreme Court, but he runs the entire New York State judicial system. And he is very, very conservative. He's anti-choice, he's anti-union. He is a perfect choice for a Republican. And here we have our Democratic governor who basically just ran a campaign. Her main issue was that she was going to protect women's choice, and she's trying to appoint someone to the Supreme Court, which has been increasingly conservative, by the way, because the last governor kept appointing conservative judges as well, and here's her first choice is a conservative Democrat, and all she says about it, but he's Hispanic. You have to support him. He's Hispanic. And the first three Democrats who came out against him in the state Senate were Hispanic progressives.
Right. So
putting her argument to lie immediately.
Does LaSalle have to be approved by the?
Yes, approved by the state Senate. And if every Republican votes against him, which is likely, although not definite. If every Republican votes against him, he can only lose 11 Democrats, and there are already 10 who have publicly said they're not voting for him, and a lot of the others are hinting that they may not vote for him.
Okay. Before you go, thank you for this. Great job as always. I want to show the Matt Gaetz tweet. All I want for Christmas is Jim Jordan to realize he should be Speaker of the House. And this is causing a split between Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I'm using your artwork from Down With Tyranny of the flames behind them in hell. Marjorie
and Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's being attacked by the whole extreme right that she was such a big part of. I mean, one of the Andy Biggs went after her in a big way and said there's no turning back with her. We're done with her. And I hate to use language like this, but one of the big right-wing talk show hosts calls her a two-bit whore, because at the same time that she's in trouble with all these people,
she's up to 2 bits now.
At the same time that she's having this political problem, she has also finalized her divorce. So now some of the details are coming out about all the affairs she was having with other men while she was married.
So she did this for Trump, right? Trump asked her to support McCarthy, correct?
I don't know. McCarthy, this is rarely talked about. But the thing that killed McCarthy's last bid to be Speaker was an affair that he had with a congresswoman named Renee Elmers. Renee Elmers. So Renee Elmers was a very conservative congresswoman from North Carolina. She and McCarthy had an affair, and that ruined his chance to be speaker, and that's when he withdrew, and that all came out. Well, there are people who I don't know if it's true, but there are people who are saying the same thing right now, that McCarthy is having an affair with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like I said, I don't know that that's true. If I had a guess, my guess would be it's not true, but it could be, because people were saying the same thing about Elmer, that it's impossible, but it turned out to be true.
A great president once said, "That's what they're saying. That's what I've heard. There's talk. People are saying." So is McCarthy, they got to pick.
Everybody is.
I'm sorry?
Everybody is saying.
Okay, so they've got to pick a speaker on when? January 3rd?
Well, they have to start the process on January 3rd. I don't think anyone thinks there's going to be a speaker chosen on January 3rd. I think that'll be the first vote, and McCarthy won't get it. And Gates and his crew are determined to wear him down until he withdraws. And we'll see. But someone's going to be worn down. We don't know if it'll be him or them. But
it's not going to be Jim Jordan who ends up being speaker.
Well, yes. It probably, I don't know, probably, but I've been guessing Jim Jordan for the last few months. I've been saying it'll probably be Jim Jordan. And now, what the Republican right wing has said is that they've already picked a candidate, but they're not going to tell who the candidate is until after the first vote. So they say they have their candidate. And then Matt Gaetz gave it away over the weekend, saying that it's Jim Jordan, even though he wasn't supposed to. They had decided that they would not tell.
And there's no way it's going to be Trump. No way.
No.
What would happen? What would happen?
We're talking about MAGA Republicans. How do you say no way? I mean, but it would be hard to imagine it would be Trump.
Hard to imagine. How many Republicans would have?
You have to work. I mean, it's not just being a figurehead. There's actual work, and I can't see Trump taking a job with his work. He's a lazy old man.
But Hastert was Tom DeLay's. Tom DeLay did all the work. Wasn't Hastert just the
Hastert worked also. Hastert was a different situation. He was a puppet for Tom DeLay, but it wasn't like he didn't do work. He did. It's just that when he did work that Hastert didn't agree with, that DeLay didn't agree with, he would have to, undo it.
Okay.
And that happens sometimes.
Okay. It is, as you've pointed out, the Speaker of the House does not have to be an elected congressperson. It is conceivable that somebody is going to nominate Donald Trump if McCarthy doesn't get it on the first ballot. What percentage of Republican congresspeople have the courage not to vote for Donald Trump for Speaker?
Well, Trump can say that he doesn't want it, which would be true. If Trump was running for it, he would get it. But I don't think he wants the job. He's running for president. It wouldn't make sense for him to take the job.
You don't think,
the thing is this,
as a showman, his sense of the rumble in the jungle, him as Speaker?
I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's improbable. And look, Gates was the one who went down to Mar-a-Lago and tried to talk Trump into it, and Trump said no. Gates said he was going to nominate Trump. He's the one that said he would do it. And then now he's talking about Jim Jordan, which makes me pretty sure that Trump has told him no.
Or they want so much chaos that they have no choice but to bring in Trump at the last minute. This would be amazing. Trump would finally be able to go to the Capitol without having to strangle his Secret Service driver.
Yeah. Well, it's something to enjoy thinking about. I just don't see it as realistic.
Howie Klein, I love what you wrote about the Pope. I agree with you 100%. Howie Klein, read him over at Down With Tyranny. Howie Klein is the founder, treasurer of the Blue America PAC, and you should read him over at Down With Tyranny. Any money, where should people be donating?
Yes, we started a new campaign at Down With Tyranny. We're trying to recruit Lucas Quince. Did you have Lucas on your show?
No.
We need to get Lucas on your show, but we're trying to talk him into running against Josh Hawley. and I think we're going to succeed.
Okay, great. Thank you, Howie Klein. I'll talk to you next week. I'll talk to you after the new year. My God, I'll talk to you New Year's Day. Could that be possible? Yes, I'll talk to you on New Year's Day, I hope.
We don't get off on New Year's Day?
Nobody gets off here. We go 52 weeks a year here at the David Feldman Show.
Fabulous.
Okay. Thank you, Howie Klein.
Thank you. Bye, David.
Bye. Read Howie Klein over at Down With Tyranny. And I'm David Feldman. If you enjoyed this segment of the show, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Remember to stay strong and protect the weak.